You're lying in bed. The room is dark, silent, but inside your head, there's noise. A voice replaying that conversation from earlier, another voice planning tomorrow, another judging yourself for not falling asleep yet, and beneath it all, a quiet exhaustion, not from the day, from the endless commentary your mind provides about the day. You've tried to quiet it, meditate, breathe deeply, think positive thoughts, but the chattering continues. And here's what no one tells you. The part of you trying to silence the mind is itself part of the noise. What if you've been approaching this entirely wrong? What if the peace you're seeking doesn't come from controlling your mind, but from understanding it so completely that it naturally becomes still? Today, we're going to explore one of Jiddu Krishnamurti's most liberating insights, drawn from his teachings in Questions and Answers and the Book of Life, to understand, in practical terms, how observation without control becomes the doorway to a quiet mind. When you discover that the observer and the observed are not two separate things, this isn't theory. This is something you can experience right now in the midst of your restless thoughts, your anxiety, your endless mental loops. Krishnamurti asks a question that cuts through everything. Why is the mind chattering, so restless, always going from one thing to another, moving from one distraction to another? And then he reveals something startling. Your immediate impulse is to control it. I shouldn't think so much. I need to stop this. But listen carefully. The controller who says, I must not chatter, is himself part of the chattering. Read that again. The voice saying, be quiet, is just another voice, another layer of noise, another thought commenting on thoughts. You haven't stepped outside the stream. You've just created another current within it. This is the trap most of us live in. We think the solution to a restless mind is a stronger, more disciplined mind, more control, better techniques. But Krishnamurti points to something far more profound. What if the problem isn't the chattering itself, but your relationship to it? Think about it. You can observe a cloud drifting across the sky, a tree swaying in the wind, a river flowing past, and your mind can be completely quiet while doing so. Why? Because the cloud doesn't threaten you. The tree doesn't trigger you. The river doesn't demand anything from you. But when you try to observe yourself, your fear, your jealousy, your loneliness, your anger, everything changes. Suddenly, there's urgency, judgment, resistance. The reactions come so fast, so automatically, that you never actually see what's there. You only see your opinion about what's there, your fear of what's there, your desire to change what's there. And this is why your mind never rests, because you're not actually observing your thoughts and feelings. You're fighting them, analyzing them, trying to manage them, and the fight itself is exhausting. Krishnamurti offers a radically different approach. He says, okay, let it chatter, not as permission to indulge in endless thinking, but as an invitation to simply watch. Be aware of the chattering. Don't try to stop it. Don't try to justify it. Don't try to understand why it's happening. Just observe. This is what he calls choiceless awareness. No preference for silence over noise. No judgment of good thoughts versus bad thoughts. Just pure attention to what is. And here's where it gets beautiful. When you observe without trying to change, something extraordinary happens. The distance between you and your thoughts begins to collapse. You realize there is no separate you watching your thoughts. There is only thinking happening, and in that realization, the conflict ends. Let me be clear about what this is not. This is not detachment. It's not becoming cold or indifferent. This is not suppression. It's not pretending the thoughts aren't there. This is not positive thinking. It's not replacing bad thoughts with better ones. This is something entirely different. This is seeing so clearly that the very act of seeing transforms what is seen. In the flame of self-awareness, of self-knowledge, the causes of conflict are discovered and consumed, not resolved through effort, not overcome through discipline, consumed. Like darkness disappears the moment you turn on a light, not because you fought the darkness, but because light and darkness cannot coexist. So, what does this look like in real life? You're scrolling through social media, and suddenly you feel it. That familiar tightness in your chest, comparison, inadequacy, the thought, everyone else has it figured out except me. The old pattern would be to either indulge the thought, spiraling into self-pity, or to fight it. Don't think that way. Be grateful. Think positive. But both of these keep you trapped. Instead, Krishnamurti invites you to simply observe. There is comparison happening. Not, I am comparing myself. Just, comparison is arising. See it. Feel the sensation in your body. Notice how the mind immediately wants to do something about it. And then, don't do anything. Just watch the whole process unfold. The thought, the feeling, the urge to react, the secondary thoughts about the thought, all of it, without naming it as good or bad, without trying to make it go away. And here's what you'll discover. When you truly observe without interference, the thought completes itself. It doesn't need to be pushed away. It simply dissolves, because it was only ever held in place by your resistance to it. Krishnamurti suggests a practice for those who find this difficult at first. Take a notebook. Throughout the day, write down your thoughts and feelings as they arise, not for analysis, not to solve them, just to bring them into awareness. I felt jealous when my colleague got praised. I judged that person in the grocery store. I felt anxious about that email I need to send. Then, before bed, read what you wrote, not to condemn yourself, not to fix anything, just to observe the patterns, the recurring themes, the automatic reactions, the conditioning that runs your life without your knowledge. But here's what's crucial. Krishnamurti says you should do this not once or twice, but for a considerable number of days. Why? Because the goal isn't to have a diary of analysis. The goal is to develop instantaneous awareness, where you become the observer in each moment, without needing the notebook. The writing is training wheels. Eventually, you learn to observe directly as life unfolds, without the delay of recording it later. You see your reaction arising, and in that very moment of seeing, you're free from it, not because you changed it, but because you saw it completely. Krishnamurti says, in studying what you have written, you will become aware of your own state. And in that awareness, not in the accumulation of information about yourself, but in the direct seeing, transformation begins, not because you tried to transform, but because awareness itself is transformative. Let me guide you through a brief experience of this right now. Close your eyes if you're in a place where you can, or simply soften your gaze. Bring your attention inward, not to search for something, just to notice what's already here. Perhaps there's a thought moving through right now, maybe about this video, maybe about what you need to do later. Don't push it away. Don't follow it into a story. Just notice it, the way you'd notice a sound in the distance. It arises, it exists, it fades, and you are the space in which this happens. Now notice, is there tension anywhere in your body, in your shoulders, your jaw, your chest? Don't try to relax it. Just bring your attention to it. Gentle, curious, without judgment. And as you observe it, something begins to shift. Not because you're doing anything, but because attention itself is healing. Stay here. Just this awareness, this presence, this simple act of being with what is, exactly as it is. No past, no future, no problem to solve. Just this. Breathe. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes. That's it. That's the whole practice. Not something you do for 10 minutes in the morning and then forget, but a way of living, a way of meeting every moment with the question, can I observe this without trying to change it? Can I see my impatience without becoming impatient about my impatience? Can I notice my fear without being afraid of my fear? Can I watch my mind creating problems without creating another problem about that? This is what Krishnamurti means when he speaks of meditation, not a technique, not a system, but constant self-awareness and constant abandonment of the self that wants to control, the self that wants to become, the self that's always seeking, always lacking, always comparing. In the light of simple observation, that self is seen for what it is, a movement of thought. And when it's fully seen, it loses its grip. Here's what science is beginning to confirm about this ancient wisdom. Neuroscientists call it metacognitive awareness, the ability to observe your own mental processes. Studies show that people who develop this capacity experience less anxiety, less depression, more emotional regulation. But Krishnamurti would say, don't practice this to get a result. That's still the old game, still the mind trying to become something better. Practice this because it's true. Practice this because, in this moment, this is what is. And the truth doesn't need a reason. To know oneself is wisdom. Not to know oneself deeply, fundamentally, is ignorance. This knowing isn't intellectual. You can read 1,000 books about water, but that's not the same as being thirsty and drinking. You can study 1,000 theories about the self, but that's not the same as observing yourself directly, in the fire of relationship, in the mirror of daily life. Krishnamurti says, for the understanding of daily life, we need no guru, no authority, no teacher. What we need is simply to observe, to be aware of our actions, our thoughts, our motives, and to discover whether there is any possibility of transforming completely our human tendencies, beliefs, and despairs. Not through someone else's method, but through our own direct seeing. So, I'll leave you with a question, not for you to answer in the comments, though you're welcome to if it helps, but for you to live with, to sit with, to observe. What if you stopped trying to fix yourself? What if, just for today, you simply watched your thoughts without believing them, watched your emotions without being consumed by them, watched your reactions without justifying them? What if the person you're trying so hard to become is just another idea preventing you from seeing who you already are. The chattering mind doesn't need to be silenced. It needs to be understood. And in the understanding, the chattering naturally subsides, not because you forced it, but because you stopped feeding it with your resistance. Krishnamurti says it clearly. Self-knowledge arises when you observe and understand all your feelings and thoughts, moment by moment, day by day. And then he adds something profound. The totality of this understanding will solve the problems of life, not just the problem of mental chatter, not just anxiety or stress, the entire conflict, not through effort, but through simple self-knowledge, through seeing yourself so completely that the causes of suffering are revealed. And in that revelation, they dissolve. This isn't a promise of future enlightenment. This is available now, in this breath, in this moment of awareness, in your willingness to look without turning away. Pause, breathe, let this settle. The quietness you seek is not something you achieve. It's something you uncover. When you stop disturbing the silence that's always been here, the peace you're looking for isn't at the end of a spiritual path. It's in the observing itself, right now. If this touches something true in you, stay with us. We walk these paths together, not to arrive somewhere, but to discover that we were never lost, just looking in the wrong direction. Until next time, be still and observe.